Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Call to Adventure, a 1 to 4 player competitive or cooperative pool building where you're going to be upgrading your abilities as you go, dice rolling, or in this case rune rolling, set collection game that also has some storytelling elements to it. In it you're going to be playing as heroes looking to gain the most destiny throughout 3 acts. And you're going to want to be the hero with the most epic life story to tell. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. The object of the game is for you to be the player with the most destiny at the end of 3 acts of gameplay. Each player is going to bring their own character storyboard and place their hero tracker on the 3rd level down of the corruption tracker. As it's your first game, you're also going to be given 1 Origins card, 1 Motivations card and 1 Destiny card. As you get the hang of the rules, you'll be given 2 of each of those and be asked to pick 1. You'll then start to reveal your character's story by flipping over your Origins card and your Motivations card. However, the Destiny card remains face down as it's going to have some endgame scoring conditions that you're going to need to keep an eye on throughout the game. You're then going to start with 1 hero card as your starting hand and 3 experience points. We then go to prepare the story deck, and for illustrative purposes I've only laid out the Act 1 cards. So in a 2 to 3 player game, each act is going to have 4 cards, but you only place the Act 1 cards at this point face up, because those are the ones that are available in the first turns of the game. You do the same with the Act 2 and 3 decks, but place those cards face down. So each player's starting origin card and motivation cards are going to give them early access to ability runes and passive abilities. Now these runes over here are going to act like dice throughout the game whenever you try to overcome a challenge. So from the top we have the 3 core runes that each player has access to on their turn. Then you'll gain access throughout the game to strength runes,
blah 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 blah.
And here at the end are dark runes, which you can spend 1 experience point each to buff your ability to overcome a challenge. However, you are exposing yourself to becoming more corrupt on the tracker here, which will have mixed effects throughout the game. Each player on their turn is going to have 2 main choices. They can either look to gain a trait like this spiritual or this rebellious card in order to gain the rewards in the top right hand corner. All you need to do to gain a trait is meet the prerequisite at the bottom. So this rebellious card says you only gain this if you gain 1 corruption by removing your hero tracker 1 down on the corruption tracker, or by spending 1 experience point. Gaining traits is fairly straightforward, so the other choice that players have access to is to overcome a challenge. And you can differentiate challenges from traits by denoting that they have 2 paths or choices, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. So let's just say we wanted to overcome this Cruel Winter challenge card in order to gain the rewards either on the top or bottom. We then need to reference the symbols on the left hand side of the card, because these are the only ability runes that we're going to be able to use to try and overcome the challenge. So this dexterity rune or this constitution rune are the only ones we're going to be able to use outside of the 3 core runes that each player gets access to on every turn. So we note player 1 here has access to 1 constitution rune. However, the strength rune here that's given from the conscript card can't be used because it's not shown here. So we know that we're going to be able to roll our 3 core runes and 1 constitution rune to try and get a number of ability equal to or greater than 4. So here we're going to pick up our 3 core runes and 1 constitution rune. Remember, at any time we can also grab 1 dark rune per experience point we spend, up to a maximum of 3. So here we need to look at then the symbols. So the core runes, these are the 3 types you'll see. A blank means you're just going to add 0 to your attribute score. This little slash or line will always add 1 to your score. And this one here is going to allow you to draw a hero or an anti-hero card, which we'll come to later. Now for each of the different type of ability runes, similarly the slash will give you 1 point, the symbol of that ability will give you 2 points, and when you have access to all 3 runes when you upgrade your character, that third rune you roll will have different abilities. So long as we have a total score of 4, we then successfully overcome that challenge. And dependent on what path we chose is how we place those cards in our character story. Now all the Act 1 cards you obtain will go under your origin card. Traits will always be above, and depending on what path you choose in the challenges will denote whether it goes above or below the card. And these are going to give you access to more ability runes, and these silver background icons are called story icons, and the more you have of a particular type is going to give you more destiny at the end of the game. Other acts you can take are to journey, and you can do this by spending 1 experience point to discard one of the cards here, replacing it with the one on the top of the deck. You can play hero or anti-hero cards at any point during the game, as long as your place on the corruption tracker allows it. Here where you start and the one below will allow you to play both types of cards. The more virtuous you become means you'll only be able to play hero cards, and the more corrupt you become means you'll only be able to play anti-hero cards. You'll continue like this until the one player places 3 cards under their origin, and that player is then going to reveal all of the Act 2 cards. You're going to rinse and repeat this process by placing all Act 2 cards under your motivation and ultimately all Act 3 cards under your destiny. The first player to do that will then allow each other player to have 1 final turn before the game ends. You'll then calculate your final destiny by adding up any triumph or tragedy on your character cards. By denoting where you are on your corruption tracker, you'll also add triumph or tragedy. You'll add 1 point for every unspent experience point you have. Any points from story icons that you've accrued, and further details of those can be found in the rules. Each and every hero or anti-hero card you play is worth 1 point. And finally, your destiny card will give certain scoring conditions. Here, the hero of destiny will give you 9 triumph if at the end of the game you've gained 1 of each ability rune. And the player with the highest destiny is the winner. So that's how this game plays. Let's see what I thought of it. So who is this game for? Well, it's light to medium weight, and it's not that difficult to get to the table, nor is it overly long. I get the sense that there's something here for you if you're a fan of role-playing games, or those old choose-your-own-adventure books. You want a bit of a ball game shell to go with the look and feel of those. I had to think a little bit about games that were similar to this, but I've come up with Legacy of Dragonholt, published by Fantasy Flight Games, because you get a similar sense of feel of being in that high fantasy world and having those storytelling elements. You also might want to consider this if you liked Splendor, published by Space Cowboys, as there are some similar mechanical elements to this. So in terms of gameplay, there's some fairly basic but also some interesting ideas on display here. The way they've tried to incorporate those storytelling elements into a ball game is largely fun and engaging. The turn sequence is quite smooth and efficient, however there is this strange dichotomy between the time it takes to gain a trait and for you to do the more rewarding element of overcoming a challenge. And so that means that some turns can be over instantaneously, or others go on that little bit longer. There's a nice change to the conventional dice here in the terms of the rune rolling, or really what's more like rune flopping or rune chucking, but that is still something a little bit different. Now, this is a game that aspires to be great, and it does that in so many ways. However, there are some shortcomings that it'd be remiss of me not to mention. So, the storytelling elements are very basic, and I would like to have seen the rulebook and the game allow you to flesh out a better story for your character at the end of the game. And that also brings me to the rule book, which has one too many omissions for my tastes. Now, this was a crowd-funded project, so it might be that things were rushed at the end, but in a largely card-based game, to not have a card anatomy drawing at the very least, it just makes things 10 times harder for the player. And there were some basic rules as well that were completely omitted from the first edition of the rules. However, wishing to end this section on a high, I would say that the overall product provides some real good value because it scales well in terms of being a competitive game and a cooperative game, and also provides a worthwhile solo experience. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, I'm largely happy across the board. The component quality is of a decent standard. There is some minor warping on the cardstock and on the character boards, but nothing particularly troublesome. The artwork really is of an excellent standard and does a good job of immersing you in this fantasy world. And the theme, you can tell there were great aspirations for making this a highly thematic game, and largely it pulls it off, but it is beholden on the player to ensure they're telling their player story or hero experience not only at the end of the game but during. So with all that being said, Dice vs Cards are going to give a final score of 7 out of 10. Because whilst this is a fantastic game and product, and some of you out there are going to absolutely love this game, because of the shortcomings that I've mentioned, that's prohibited me from giving it a slightly higher score. So that's it from me. I'll see you next time.